I swear to God, it looks like you're at the Grand Canyon right now.
Huh. What a day. This fog is kind of, or this smoke is kind of a nice atmosphere.
Yes. Hi everybody, and welcome to the top of Saddle Mountains in central Washington. Taking a break from the exotic terrains just for today. It's a beautiful Sunday morning. Yeah, there's some smoke, but otherwise, this is the place that I featured back in May with the private land and the amazing exposures of sedimentary and basaltic and volcanic stratigraphy. I'm with a friend today, Skye Cooley, who drove over from Montana. Let's learn from Skye as he continues his studies of calcretes in the stratigraphy here locally. Thanks for joining us. Let's get started. Great to be with you today.
Great to see you again, Nick. This is fun.
So we're looking west over Skye's head. We're looking down this incredible face of the Saddle Mountains. The Columbia River is in the smoke down there. And we have permission to be up here. This is the private land of the siblings. And so what do we know so far here, Skye? We've got a lip down below you that is the top of the Elephant Mountain basalt flow?
Yeah, so the uppermost flow here at Saddle Mountains, the uppermost Miocene basalt,
Yeah.
we can see on the rim just poking out before you drop off into the abyss. And what you're standing on is sort of the upper surface of the sediment that's still preserved up here on the top of this anticline.
Good. Well, let's walk a little bit, and we can just keep chatting. It'll be kind of fun.
So what you're standing on is about a meter and a half thick calcrete.
It is.
That's developed into, looks like heavily burrowed silt with a sandy component to it. And then beneath that is 2 meters of cicada burrowed reddish sandy silt. So
which may or may not be ringgold formation.
Yeah, this looks, if anything, this looks like the paleosol, one of the 2 or 3 paleosol intervals in the uppermost ringgold. If anything.
Okay. Well, let me drop down over here on this spur.
Sure.
See what you're talking about, but this is great. Wow. Just give you a little sneak peek over here while Skye's doing a little bit of work. Oh, baby. Oh, baby. Oh. Oh, I forgot how good this is right over here. Jeez. Oh. Well, that's where we're headed, but let's go back down to what Skye's doing here. So pleased to have you with us today. This is obviously not an exotic terrain session. We've been doing those lately. But Skye mentioned he was in the area, and I thought, well, hey, it's always fun to visit and learn new things. And I'm about an hour from Ellensburg. Leave my water right there. I can't believe I'm excited to look at calcretes, but you've done it. You've gotten me going.
Well, it's what they tell us. It's not them alone. It's what they say about the paleo environment, the depositional conditions, the topography. So, pretty spectacular little ledge here.
I would say so.
And you can still see, even though this calcrete is pretty thoroughly overprinting the sediment, you still see the original sediment, even though it's kind of been inflated and glued together.
Wow.
But this stuff is this stuff, and this is just thoroughly cicada burrowed sandy loess. And that's, you know, there's at least 1.5 meters here, and that calcrete is at least 1 meter thick above it, probably more than that, 1.5 meters thick. So 1.5 meters and 1.5 meters. And in between here, up in here, that gray burrowed, see all those little root casts in there? Mm-hmm. That's very typical of these calcrete ledges in this region, is that they incorporate these pods, these lenses of thoroughly burrowed, both rodent, plant, insect burrowed, gray, sandy material. So the calcrete's built on an older sediment. This might be Pleistocene, this might be upper ringgold, so it might be upper Pliocene, but we can't tell. We just know it's a burrowed sandy loess.
All right, well, let me hold you up for just a sec. So okay. I'm thinking back to May when we were together over at Othello, and our first stop, let's say a viewer just got done watching that video.
Okay.
And we work our way down through the hay bales, we get to that exposure, and you say, here's calcrete, and then we dove right into this little underneath the ledge, and we saw the very top of the ringgold, which was that Savage whatever.
Savage Island, yeah.
And it was like, it was kind of bluish and goldish kind of laminations or something?
Sort of variegated brown, green, black, white, yeah.
And you said there, I'm just trying to remind myself here, you said, this is a major unconformity. This is ringgold below, this is calcrete above, and there's like perhaps more than 1 million years of time missing between the top of the ringgold and the calcrete over there.
Over there.
Now I can see in your eyes that you're not as confident to say that here because you don't know these strat columns yet.
Yeah, so we're discovering something new today, and new to us anyway.
So it could be just as dramatic here. It could be the very top of the ringgold, and this could be this 1 million years of time, and we're into the ice age almost. But we're not there. You haven't done your work up here yet.
Yeah, we don't know if this is part of the ringgold or if this is part of the Palouse loess. Okay, so we're at that feather edge between major geologic sort of domains here, right? We talked about that, where we've got scablands, we've got tectonically uplifted ridges, and then we've got the Palouse, which is a wind-blown, wind-dominated region. So we're at that triple junction again, where we're getting aspects of all three. Mm-hmm. The difference is here, the difference is at Othello, you're in Crab Creek, right? That's a lowland setting.
We were down there.
Yeah, we were
around the corner.
500 meters lower.
And
where we are now.
20 miles that way or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
And here we're literally on the crest of the Saddle Mountains. And so we're in the ballpark with the strata. It's about the same place, but we don't know exactly where we are. Yep. So we're sort of working our way along, making short descriptions of what we see, and comparing notes as we go. So adding some detail to this uppermost remnant of sediment on top of the Saddle Mountains. The Saddle Mountains are mostly basalt, but here we get a couple miles of young sediment and calcrete.
Would you be the first to be working up detailed strat columns here?
Detailed strat columns in the uppermost portion, yes. Lydia Steisch did detailed work along here, but was focused on, slightly older rocks. Her detail in the calcrete bearing zone was not, it just wasn't very thorough, but her job was something different. She was after some other
she had a different focus, your focus is quite a bit of this stuff.
Yeah, I'm wondering if this calcrete, if these thick calcretes can be correlated across this this ringgold basin.
Well, it is good right around the corner. I don't know. Do you want to spend some time here and work up a
I'm going to just a couple minutes just to sketch what I've got, and then
go for it.
We can move on.
Yeah, it'd be fun just to see what your approach is.
So I've found that these things are correlatable in a crude way, but it depends on the sediments, not the calcretes. The calcretes are going to do what they're going to do.
I see.
But the sediments are distinct. I mean, that's as distinct as it gets. Reddish paleosol, 2 meters thick. There's probably 3 soils here. Where on the Palouse, these would be a named soil. This would be called the Devil's Canyon or the Washtuckna or something, and be constrained with ash beds. But here we just don't talk about the Palouse stratigraphy. Is this ashy? I don't know. Well, I'm not real sure. So I'm just taking some kind of crude, quick notes.
Well, we're not right next to a feedlot for this one. I mean, you've been looking hard to find good exposures like this, so this has got to rank up there as far as...
Yeah. I mean, this is as good as it gets anywhere in the region, and that's why I'm, I think at the end of that video I said, some of the named paleosols that have been established in the Palouse might best be expressed at Saddle Mountains, and I think this is kind of where that idea comes from.
We are.
I could be wrong.
Well, for the viewers, I think you're aware of this by now if you've been watching a number of the videos on the channel, but this is a mix of talking to folks who've been carefully studying a place for decades, like Bob Miller, but also working with guys like Joel Gombiner or Jerome Lessman, who were visiting, in the middle of their work or even at the beginning of their work. And maybe for this location, maybe it's appropriate to say Skye's just starting to get familiar with these sections. You've been up here a little bit, but...
Yeah, I've been around the region. This is sort of the last part of the area.
Oh.
Yeah, so I've sort of circled the Saddle Mountains, and this is, this is private land, so it's not, you can't just waltz in here. So that's why it's been later.
You've been nibbling on the corners, and now it's time for the main event, the main course. Sweet. So I think what we'll do next when we're done with Skye here is to go around to that view that we just saw a moment ago and follow these layers, and it will be fun to hear what Skye has to say about what variation he sees, if at all, with these beds. Like, how well behaved are these beds? Do they continue? Are we going to see this continued reddish brown soil, or are we going to see something else that might look like that upper ringgold? But one more thing, just for you viewers. I've mentioned this in other videos, but just in case it's not clear to you, there's a major fault right here, the Saddle Mountains Fault. And so this stratigraphy that we're looking at here is for sure the same stratigraphy as way down there low. And so there's been a big old knife cut, the Saddle Mountains Fault, and earthquakes have been lifting this side of the fault. Details of which still being worked out. When did the fault begin? When did the earthquakes begin? Are the earthquakes still happening? That's not our topic today, but if I ever get serious about doing some earthquake programs again, using the most recent research on seismic risk in Washington, this is one place we would be visiting for sure.
It's something that you just learn as a geologist. It's sort of soils and it's sort of geology, but you got to kind of make up your own units and then stick with them. And it's been a challenge because you can't just go to some book and go, oh, it's cross-bedded sandstone. It's a hummocky cross-bedded sandstone. Right. You can't find that. So how do you describe these? I've come to sort of call these heavy stringers, of calcium carbonate, and these zones have some thickness, but it's a little bit of creativity, but you got to be consistent from place to place to place and use the same terminology so you can follow your own notes.
Well, I got to say I'm slightly less clear on how you're able to follow these calcretes if they're not always on top of the ringgold, or they're not always, full of ice age flood boulders or something like that. So is it just a general thickness of this stuff regardless of what they're masking? Or how are you feeling like you can use these calcretes to go regionally, as we'll see? We can, you're down here, let's
well, we know we're above the basalt, right? We know we're above the basalt, and there's nothing above us. So we know generally where we are in the section.
Okay. Holy shit, what is this?
And we know where things have been mapped. Yeah, so good call. So here's these little funny features. So sort of this package of calcrete here with sort of a horizontality. Same thing here. And then here's this big gravel pile. These are clearly clasts of calcrete. This is, a deposit that's channeled into the calcrete, which is not unusual.
Really?
But yeah, and you can see here's clasts here. So you start to develop an eye. I guess that's, continuing what I'm talking about. You do develop an eye for this, but it does take a little bit. And those are important things to see. What you're seeing right there is important. That's flowing water or some other means of collapsing clasts into a trough. Doesn't look like it's faulted here, but a little oddity. We'll see if we can find that again, maybe in a bigger deposit.
None of your black pebbles that you had at that feedlot stop.
No, we're not seeing basalt clasts here. Nothing that looks like a flood gravel.
I mean, come on, that would be the ultimate. If we had flood gravels on top of this thing.
It'd be fun to find, wouldn't it?
And we know what that would mean. We'd mean that we need this entire uplift to happen younger than the oldest floods.
Yeah, which we know, are certainly younger than 2 million years.
Ah. Well, there's your cinnamon brown with some pretty white stuff above. That doesn't look just like calcrete overprinting, or does it? Like right here.
Well, this looks like the same. Are you talking about what's right below our feet?
Like right
I think that's the same as what we were just looking at. Yeah, let's go confirm that. So we had 1.5 meters of thoroughly burrowed, reddish, silty, sandy soil, or at least sediment. Yeah, definitely probably a couple paleosols here stacked. See this spectacular tubes here.
Oh my.
So all those little cylinders are trace fossils. And that reddish color is saying that it's oxidized, and that goes with age. So that's a part of diagenetic processes.
These are, who's burrowing here?
So those are cicada.
Cicada?
Yeah.
Potentially 5 million year old cicadas?
Probably not that old, but certainly Pleistocene, possibly Pliocene.
Huh.
But this is really common in sort of the lowest portions of the Palouse.
Huh.
Yeah, so
that's a vote for Palouse and not necessarily for ringgold?
Well, what it says to me that this is not necessarily an alluvial deposit. This doesn't look like a riverbed or an overbank deposit to me, right? We're sort of in that dryland loess category with some of this look. It's really uniform. There's no bedding. It's thoroughly burrowed with things that don't like to be wet. So we're still in that possible lowest Palouse loess. It's possible. It could be Pliocene, but it would be Pliocene loess if that's the case.
Hey, Skye, I promise I was listening. I just saw those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Should I be getting excited? Is this?
Well, so at Othello, when we looked at those calcretes, we saw exactly the same relationships. Thick calcrete, scaffolded on some deposit below that changed, but we had, well, here, right here. See, there's that gray, sandy bed that we saw pods of, lenses of back at the other one. There's the same stuff, and it's associated with cobbled pebble gravel here. So, what are our possibilities? This is definitely flowing water. It's not a huge amount of water. This is either a distributary channel on an alluvial fan, or there's a side stream channel. There's not a lot of excitement here, but it is gravel being moved by water, which means you're in a lowland setting, right? These root casts are wetland plant roots. So is this an overbank deposit that dried out and then was burrowed, or was this loess that was just burrowed at some point?
Oh my goodness.
Don't know. But good eye. Yeah, pretty cool to see small cobble gravel right here associated with the base of that calcrete. So at the last stop, we had maybe 1.5 meters of this reddish burrowed silty sandy stuff, and we've got at least that here. So basically the same stratigraphy as we were just looking at.
Sure.
But we picked up those gravels, where at the last place we were just seeing that those root casts in that sandy gray lens came and went. So if we keep moving along here, or maybe go up, either way, it's just spectacular.
It's massive looking. I don't know if that's just a face or if that's really the
calcrete itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it gets old like this, when you get such thorough overprinting, it just sort of plugs every pore. And so you don't have much record of the parent material. It's just all calcium carbonate. I mean, I got to take a picture, right? Come on. All right, so consistent stratigraphy so far, nothing crazy. My big question is this a lowland deposit? Are the sediments lowland sediments, or are they windblown sediments that could be anywhere? They could be high, middle, low in a landscape, right? To have loess accumulate, you can be up on the top of a mountain, no problem. You can be on the side of a mountain, no problem. You can be in the valley, no problem. But if they're wetland deposits, there's only one place those can be. And that helps us restore topography. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so those gravels have sort of been replaced by rip-ups of calcrete through here. So we definitely got flowing water through this section.
This is great. Sunday morning with Skye Cooley. Damn right.
I wish I had like 30 years of like, oh, I've seen this, I know all those stuff. But that's just not the case. This is like year 2.5 for me on this stuff. And
that's the way it works.
Yeah. So the calcrete's thickened here. The sediment package seems to be thickening to the west or to the east, and it's got more variety to it. So those gravels that you picked up on sort of express differently as you go laterally. Their lenses and the energy's changing. So you've got little rip-ups, some gravels, but they kind of peter out laterally. But good eye, man, really good eye. We should see like full-on channel gravels at some point. If we've got small channels like this, we should find, you know, full-on cobble gravel deposits. Yeah, here's your gravel again. Just sort of, and it's all basalt class. There's not like granites, you know, or quartzites or something. It's nothing like that. These are locally derived basalts, pretty well rounded. Okay. In a hash of
I know you're in the zone right now, but I'm going to get greedy and pull back just for a second.
Okay.
So that's Ice Age floods country right down there. We have for sure major floods coming down this Crab Creek drainage, coming out of Drumheller channels younger than 20,000 years ago. Everybody agrees that.
Yeah.
It's almost certainly Montana water for some of it. And then in the last video with you, you said there's 2 other emerging chapters of Ice Age floods, a few 100,000 years ago, and then maybe 1 million years ago, potentially.
Yeah.
And possibly studying of these calcretes are part of documenting some of those older Ice Age flood chapters. What would you need to do with a calcrete unit here, or maybe other places that you know much better, to document time, to know that we're 1 million years ago if we find some pebbles or cobbles, or 100,000 years ago, or now? Like, I want to get excited about some basaltic class in this stuff, but I don't know what time we're talking about.
Yeah, well, we know we're in the Pliocene and we know we're in the Pleistocene. So that's our bracket. So we're younger than 10 million years by a long shot.
Okay.
Ideally, you'd find ash beds in here that are datable.
Okay.
Or you would find, you know, something like charcoal, which I would doubt is preserved in here at all. Otherwise, you got to kind of go back to the roots of geology, where you do the stratigraphy and you correlate that stratigraphy. And, you know, how convincing that is based on how well you do the job and if the geology is cooperating. I don't know if it's cooperating or not. Here, so dating this stuff would come down to, you know, accepted geochronologic methods like ash. And here, these beds are ashy. It's hard to find ash, but it does show up. This sort of cobbly gravel doesn't mean a whole lot to me, because it could be an alluvial fan, which puts us up in the highlands, no problem. It could be a side stream gravel that was similar to what modern Crab Creek is. So this isn't telling me anything about age. It's just telling me about depositional setting.
Well, just in case it's unclear to the viewers, I think you know what I'm going after, but the greediest part would be there's some way to document Ice Age flood deposits in this calcrete. Let's say it's 2 million years ago, and we don't have the Saddle Mountains at all 2 million years ago, and we've got Ice Age floods coming through a relatively flat area, and since that time, this whole thing rises to the heavens. That's the ultimate. Seems like we're ways away from that, but it's not impossible to have some of these calcrete horizons intersecting with some of those oldest Ice Age flood deposits. And the punchline is, today, these are 1,000 feet higher than they should be.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what's gone on, that would be sort of a revolution around the Pacific Northwest. That'd be a big deal.
Yes.
I'm not saying that now.
Right.
I have, you know, may or may not ever say that.
Right.
So what I'm interested in is understanding where we are in the topographic setting from about 3 million years ago to 20,000 years ago. Okay. Unconformities sort of provide that context. So we've got sort of we understand stuff that's older than a few million years, and we understand stuff like late Pleistocene. We're sort of in the middle between those two things. So a few million years to a few tens of thousands of years.
Yeah.
But we know, because of the thickness of these calcrete soils, that these take tens to hundreds of thousands of years to develop.
I forgot that. It has to be a stable surface.
Yeah, and it's a stable climate too. It's a dry, tons of water moving, evapotranspiring through this sediment. So we know we've got a considerable age, tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of years, just in this development. So the sediments and these calcrete ledges are hundreds of thousands of years old.
Okay, well, here's a different way for me to think about it then. This is a stable, dry surface, and during some of the big old Ice Age floods, were these ledges high and dry and watching the action, or were they low enough to be potentially part of the action?
Yeah, I would guess they were probably watching the action.
Watching the action.
Yeah, at this point.
But they keep getting jacked higher and higher.
Yeah. Pretty fast. And certainly in the last couple million years, they've seen a lot of topographic rise. I think the other thing is, this Crab Creek drainage really accentuates this north face of Saddle Mountains, much more so than maybe the structure would if the floods had never come here.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a bigger face and a more dramatic face because of those floods have scoured away a huge portion of the sediment that was here. Because the same calcretes and the same sediments that are sitting up on top of here are just across the valley below the farmland on the Royal Slope. And, this surface, this surface across the valley to the north on Royal Slope, south flank of the Frenchman Hills, projects right across to the Smyrna Bench.
Yeah.
So you can kind of reconstruct what volume has been excavated here by the floods. But it's a dramatic face either way.
It is. Come on. It's late summer 2022 and late summer 1922. Brett's is walking down there right with a couple of his students, like right down there. Let me zoom in. Let me get the Brett's bald spot, like right there. They're walking through the Drumheller channels for the first time.
And sort of just, every time a basalt flow comes out, it takes a certain amount of time, it wipes out the landscape, and then the drainage is reestablished, and the sediments start coming back. And you start to build those things up, and I think that's exactly what we just see in the Ringgold too, but it's, this isn't Ringgold what we're looking at. This is sediment that's in place where Ringgold should be. But is it Ringgold? Well, it sort of looks more like Pleistocene stuff.
Oh, here we go.
Than the Savage Island.
Here we go. That's what I'm fishing. Okay. So you know what the Ringgold looks like in many of your other strat sections, and you're not seeing Smoking Gun Ringgold up here, even though it says Ringgold on a bunch of the maps.
Yeah,
it's still possible, but you're not as convinced it's all Ringgold.
Yeah, I think that the Calcrete functions as sort of a mapping criteria for Ringgold, even if Ringgold isn't there. So, it's possible that these are not basinal deposits. It's possible that these were just above the lowland, the Lake Ringgold sediments being deposited in Lake Ringgold, right? So it's possible that these were never lowland deposits. I think we'll figure that out by looking at them. So we may be above the highest shoreline of Lake Ringgold in this package. I don't know. If these are Ringgold, then they are sort of odd. I mean, they don't look like the upper Ringgold that's established around here. They look more Pleistocene.
So what if they're Palouse?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, so a big story about the Palouse loess in the last 20 years has been big pulses of wind-blown sediment have accompanied floods, mega floods, right? So big floods and then big pulses of loess that build on the Palouse. But if you've got Pliocene loess, you didn't have floods in the Pliocene. You didn't have mega floods in the Pliocene.
How many millions of years ago for the Pliocene?
3, 4, 5 million years ago.
Okay.
So loess was present in the Pliocene, certainly not at the thickness it is in the Pleistocene, but it might be there.
Huh.
So you get a dry, windy landscape that may have existed since, the Cascades rain shadow was established, which is, a few million years ago. So we're looking at these, and they look like low-angle loess, slightly sandy, with little stringers of gravel, and then these thick calcretes built through them. These aren't high-angle anything. This is a low-energy environment.
Which was implied when they mapped it as Ringgold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm not even sure I didn't bring the map, but I'm not sure exactly where they draw the contact for Ringgold here. But they called it something, and I think they call it the Plio-Pleistocene complex, or the Cold Creek unit, depending on where you are.
Well, I don't know if you want to bring Lydia into this or not, but she's finding all these zircons in what she's calling Ringgold up here, and that's where she's got her Snake River sands and all that, right?
Yeah, I think it sounds like that the Columbia flowed through Crab Creek for a time, and maybe the Snake system did too.
Jeez.
So do we see anything really wild or different here? Not really. We're still in that 6, 7, 8 meters of section above the Elephant Mountain.
I can't believe this place. The lighting's even better than in May. It's getting better as the hour goes by. I don't get the green at the top of the Elephant Mountain, by the way.
That looks like lichen.
Does it?
Yeah, if you look down below here, see that?
Oh.
Closer.
Yeah.
So the idea with this Ringgold is that maybe the ridges, the basalt ridges, were just poking up above the Ringgold, the last of the Ringgold system, the last lake system in the Ringgold. And if that's the case, and say we call this Pliocene sediment, so Ringgold equivalent, then these were sort of so the topography was sort of a subtle, subtle rolling hills through here with low angle fans that were full of dust and a little bit of gravel and some wetland, pockets of wetlands here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how the landscape would come together. But there's been a lot of relief since then, and if these are Pliocene, well, then you've got a few million years to generate this relief. If these are Pleistocene, then you have considerably less time.
Well, that would be, talk about revolution. If these are Pleistocene,
if
we're popping this thing up in 2 million years?
Yeah, if the Saddle Mountains is 2 million years, that's a big deal.
It's not impossible, but it would unlikely, I guess. I don't know. Like, you do some calculations in the back of an envelope and you go, that.
Yeah, that's
ripping. You get that?
I just feel like we're, so when you move, so in Othello, you've got really thick calcretes without a lot of sediment between them, and they're sort of welded on top of one another.
Oh, yeah.
And as you move into the Palouse, you start to sort of fan the calcretes with the increasing sediment.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's what's happening here too. We're sort of increasing the amount of sediment here in the soils. The calcretes are separating more and more, and they're becoming more distinct, and the sediments between them become more distinct.
Yeah, it's almost like you got more than 3 ledges now.
Yeah. They take on a different.
We had 1, then we had 3, now we got more.
Yep.
As you pick more thickness.
And that makes sense, that sort of thinning and thickening with a fan environment, right? Where you've got quick changes in the thickness. I mean, we're only talking a few meters, but a low angle fan environment would change thickness quickly here and there if it were flashy slopes, flashy, storms that sort of create gullies and fill gullies and create a new gully. But everything's low angle, that's for sure. So let's look at this. Is this that same burrowed brown unit, or is this an overbank deposit or something more, maybe wetter? Yeah, so that's that burrowed, reddish, silty, sandy unit. That repeats. So in the Palouse, they've named, several paleosols based on soil criteria and age and bracketing by ash beds and by unconformities. But here, those soil units we don't use that terminology, and we don't know if these are the same soils or if these are much older. But there's several of them. Man. Yeah, there's familiar units as we go along. I mean, you look at 30 different outcrops around this region, and there are definitely units that come consistently at the same places.
Well, that's pretty cool that you're just finding these old friends from county to county. None of them in this high relief setting, but still, you got some of these friends.
Yeah, when I look at this, there's portions of this that look like overbank sediments that look wet, that look wetland type deposits, like what I'm looking at right here that's sitting on top of the basalt. But immediately when you move up above that, you get into this stuff that looks a lot more like the Palouse loess, just older. Now look at that slug. I mean, that's a big tuffaceous. Is that your that's your Cougar Point, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
God, that's thick.
That's reworked up the yin yang, I guess.
20 meters thick. Unbelievable.
That's the company line. I have no idea how accurate that is. Is that just one sample out of, where did they sample to get?
Well, I mean, the bottom 3 meters of that is almost pure ash. And then above that, it gets browner and definitely takes on a different character, but pretty ashy. I've been down
And there, the brick red is in the bed. It's not in the basalt above it. At least it
Yeah.
appears from here.
Well, come this way a little bit. You pick it up a little in that pod, but yeah, maybe that's a weathering. It expresses better in weathered basalt maybe than the fresh cliff face there.
It may be our perspective here, but you asked if the top of the Elephant Mountain was an erosional surface. It sure as hell looks like it from here, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Look at that angular unconformity between the Calcrete ledges and the basalt.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite a bit of relief there. These look folded too. I mean, that's not just erosion. That looks like we're sort of dipping into that saddle.
Where's Smyrna Bench from here? Is it around the corner? Way down?
Yeah, another few miles. Yeah, because this is the crossing here this is where I hiked up before. So that's the crossing. Yeah, there's the first campground. Yeah, a couple miles.
You hiked up.
You do dumb things.
You're motivated.
Let's go one more and see what we find there.
Love it.
Okay. Do you need some water? I got some water.
I'm good. Thank you for now. Thanks. But yeah,
Let's get some here.
Dumb to carry that jug. I need two hands when I'm filming. What am I thinking about? I can't point with a jug in my hands.
I'm going to send you a Camelback.
Jug head.
Yeah, pretty good unconformity there. And that's been well known. I mean, from the beginning, the first people out here were like, yeah, there's an angular relationship on the top of the basalt with the sediments, with the ringgold, with the calcrete.
Well, what does that tell us? What does this angular unconformity tell us?
Yeah, well, there's time loss between there, right? So you've got development of the fold, and that was accompanied by erosion as it emerges. And then at some point, that eroded basalt surface gets inundated again by what looks to be fairly, I don't know, slope deposits, but low angle slope deposits.
We're still kind of low instead of real low, and not up high. Again, we can't be depositing that sediment up here.
Not on a ridge crest.
Okay.
Not on a ridge crest, but you know, if the relief was a lot lower, you know, more like the Frenchman Hills. You know, Frenchman Hills might be a good analog. Where, they're a mountain, they're a thrust structure, but you know, you hardly notice them when you drive by them.
Right.
So there's gravel in this unit here. So your gravels are everywhere. They just come and go, but they come and go quickly, and there aren't big cobbles. So locally derived distributary fan panels. Softball sized gravels, sort of sub-rounded to angular. You know, the difference between here and those, what I'm calling flood gravels over at Herman Rail Cut over by Othello that we looked at, is that here we are on the side of or on the top of a fold. Over there's no fold anywhere near, so you have to call on different processes to create the gravel.
Yeah.
The gravel here are probably alluvial fans. The gravels there cannot be, because there's no fold.
That's really helpful. Yeah, context is everything.
Yeah.
In the middle of some flat place, you got these huge boulders. You rule out half the choices.
And over there, you've got exotic clasts. You've definitely got non-basaltic clasts. So same stuff. There's that burrowed red.
Looks familiar.
Yep, real consistent. What a vista! Holy cow! Oh my heavens, we're lucky.
All right, I got to go to that second ledge.
I mean,
that's enough for me.
Come on, you don't want to stop. Look at the structure. I mean, geez. It's funny how the basalts are dipping to the south here, but we're right at the crest. You know, we're on the axis of that anticline. They should be dipping to the left. They just roll over so quickly, they're gone. Well, it's a segmented structure.
That's the way to say it, yes.
Yeah, so it kind of has 4, 5, 6 personalities, maybe five different segments. I think Rydell put that forward quite a while ago. He just sort of said, no, these developed in slightly different ways and different pulses and expressed differently. And,
I don't get why, though.
well, I think a lot of mountain ranges are segmented. We just tend not to, you know, the people that do detailed work on any one mountain range are going to find segments, and people that, like us, that don't, probably don't. God. Yeah, what a shot.
Well, it's coming back to me because to remind you, I was up here with the siblings on a Saturday, and the next morning I was with you at Othello, and I'm like, holy cow, this is the same stuff I just saw the previous day.
Yeah.
And here I am with you up here, and we're still like,
looks
it's similar, but you're not.
Different sediments.
Different sediments.
Different sediments. The soils are going to do what the soils are going to. Soils are kind of controlled by the climate, right? And the sediments are controlled by other things, mostly flowing water and wind. What a shot.
Well, yes, viewers, I'd love to say, here's the GPS location, here's how you get up here, here's how you can have a picnic lunch looking at this view. I just can't. I'm sorry. It's private land. At some point, I don't know, in the future, will this be public? I won't say it. I'll just say that this is an incredible place. It's an incredible place.
Well, the cows get to enjoy it.
Yeah, they do. Too bad they're dumber than anybody else.
Oh, man.
Well, thanks everybody for watching this one. Thanks to Skye for spending some time with us. Hope you enjoyed this part 2, I guess that's what this is, of the Saddle Mountain story, and we will continue to check in with Skye and others who might have an interest in pursuing some new approaches and some new leads with this amazing vista here in Central Washington. Thank you, I love you, and goodbye.